All right, welcome back to the Tim Teaches podcast. I'm your host, Tim McCoy. Today we're joined by Earl Koski, an accomplished business leader and executive board member at Rythmia Life Advancement Center in Costa Rica. Rythmia is the world's only medically licensed ayahuasca retreat. Today we're going to be talking about your upcoming docuseries you're producing on ayahuasca. We're going to dive into your background and business a little bit and how you got into your healing journey. Earl, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, buddy.
Tim, thank you. You forgot to mention one thing. You're my brother-in-law, so we should put that out there too.
Full disclosure, I was just going to pretend like I didn't even know you, but no. Earl's actually the guy who basically did in 1 week what the VA couldn't do for me in 20 years. So I owe this guy everything, honestly. Man, you changed my life, and I really do appreciate everything that you've done for me, my family, and what you're doing for the world.
Oh, thanks, man. There's honestly, I really haven't done much. I did happen to be the first one to go kind of down this healing journey out of a lot of my friends and family. And luckily, a few people have kind of followed in that same path and found some of the freedom you got. So it was nothing with me. I mean, it was the medicine, it was the place, it was your own work. But yeah, man, I'm glad you feel that way. And it's been awesome getting to connect through this work. And I really enjoyed listening to all the podcast episodes you put out there and hearing about so many different people's experiences.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, like I said, you have changed my life and you've changed a lot of other people's lives. So how the hell did you get into ayahuasca, man? Because really, I don't actually know the full story. I'm not just making that up. I do know that your wife, my sister-in-law, is on that healing path and kind of the woo-woo chick, and is awesome and led everybody down this road. So
it used to seem woo-woo until I realized it all worked. And then I was like, oh, you actually have a lot of wisdom that I should have been listening to more closely. But no, really the way that I get into it was a few years ago, my wife was invited to go to an ayahuasca retreat with some friends. And we had never really looked into it too much. Really didn't know much about it. But once she was going to kind of take that step to go do it, I became interested. So I started reading about it, learning about it. And really for me, I'm a researcher. I don't just jump into things. I mean, she operates a lot more sometimes by faith and just by, going with the natural flow. That's something I'm working on. But I started looking into what this medicine is and what it does. I'm someone who grew up very straight arrow, I would say, and haven't really experimented with a lot of different things. And, there's a certain stigma attached to some of these kind of plant medicines and the journeys that people go on. But as I did my research, it seems like there's a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life that have found a lot of freedom from going through this. And so I wanted to find a place that felt safe. It felt like they had experienced shamans and guides, because I was very nervous getting into it, having never done it. And so after reading a lot of different reviews and watching a lot of podcasts and videos, I came across Rythmia, which, as you mentioned, the big thing for me was the fact that they are a medically licensed center, a life advancement center. And they have a chief medical officer who's ran some really big rehab centers in the United States. And so I felt very safe and very comfortable going there. I had to kind of tiptoe into it to make sure I was going to be taken care of, probably, out of a little bit of fear. But that's kind of how I first heard about it. And, I'm someone who, for most of my life, I'm an introvert. I'm very independent. And sometimes that hasn't always been the best thing. But really, I think at the time I was 41, 42 years old, and I was just kind of ready to level up my life in ways that I hadn't done before. And so I decided that I wanted to go to Rythmia. I wanted to go alone. I didn't try to bring any friends or family with me. I just wanted to kind of go there. And I'd never done anything like, I mean, you know how it is having kids, taking 7 days to go by yourself anywhere. I felt so much guilt about doing that, but it ended up being the best week of my life. In a lot of ways, it was the hardest week of my life because it ripped a lot of band-aids off that I don't know if I would have done on my own. But literally in one night, my second night there, everything changed. And I think the thing that put it over the top for me to go to Rythmia was I'm a data guy. I'm an investor, I'm a businessman, and I'm in sales and marketing. And, Rythmia publishes what they call a miracle rate, which seemed a little bit weird to me, just that term. But the way that they define that is, 6 to 12 months after you've worked with this medicine, how much of an impact did it have on your life? And 98% of the guests that went through said it was the week that changed their life. And so I participated. and yeah, the rest is history. It's been about 2.5 years now, and I don't necessarily go out of my way to just tell everyone you need to go do this, but for those who are military vets, for those who have past trauma, for those who feel stuck in their job or in their marriage or in, the fact that they're single, maybe they don't know what to do, it really can just help you to connect back with yourself. That's what I experienced. And yeah, it was just something unexpected, but it was, the miracle of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. I would say that on that bus ride from Liberia Airport to Rythmia, I was starting to question your judgment a little bit because
Mhm.
driving on these roads out in the middle of nowhere, they're playing the video with the founder Jerry, and it's a little bit sketchy. But when you get there, it's an incredible place, and everybody's so welcoming. It's a beautiful grounds, and the work they're doing there is incredible. Changed my life. What was like your first ceremony? Did you have any idea what that was going to be like going into it? Had anybody told you some of the
Yeah.
details?
Again, I had read and researched a lot, so I'd heard, but nothing can really prepare you for the first ceremony. So my first night in, I think like a lot of us Westerners that have this need to control everything, I didn't really have that impactful of a first night. I mean, what the medicine was kind of helping me to do was to settle into the first intention. So at Rhythmia, there's 3 different intentions that we try to take guests down through the week. The first one is just to show me who I've become,
Mhm.
the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And so that first night for me, it was very meditative, I would say. It was, being in the Maloka, being in ceremony, just thinking about me and my past, my childhood, my teenage years, my relationships, and just being willing to take a hard look at the things that, there were things I was proud of and things I felt so blessed about. But there were a lot of times in my life that I felt ashamed of, or I felt guilty about the way I reacted, or I just didn't show up for people the way that I wanted to. And so that first night was difficult just because I really had to sit with that. But I think that's kind of the first step, right? If you want to make a change, is just getting honest with yourself. And that's kind of where it started. But once you kind of are willing to face those things and break through them, that's really when the magic happens. And really, one of the most beautiful things about any of these types of plant medicines, is that they are very intentional. So as long as you go into it with really an open heart and an open mind, it's going to naturally take you to a place where you can accept a lot of things about yourself that you never thought you could accept, and then you just learn to love those things. And I think that was kind of the way to sum up my first night. It was just let's really just get into this and let's face these things, because it's so easy when we get busy to think, well, I'm going to change this about myself later, or I'll deal with this later, and then you look up and you're 41 and you've never done it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're also an entrepreneur, a business guy, and so you went to Rhythmia, you had that experience, and now you're on the board of directors. Like, how did that, how did that happen? It seems
Yeah.
kind of wild.
Yeah, it is wild, and I definitely didn't see that happening. But like I said, that week at Rhythmia was so life changing for me. It just helped me connect back to myself in so many ways, and we can maybe get into that too. But in terms of how I got started with it, I got home, and the only way I can describe it was it felt like a rebirth. I never had so much gratitude in my heart. I never had so much love, really, for myself. And that's easy for me to say now, but back then, it kind of showed me that I really didn't have a lot of self love and self acceptance. But as the father of 4 boys, those things are so important for me to lead with them and to teach them. And I just wanted to start to exemplify that myself as much as I could. So I got home from Rhythmia. It was amazing. Um, Jerry Powell, who is the founder and one of the owners, and Dr. Jeff McNary, who's the chief medical officer, and we have these amazing shamans and guides. And I didn't really know any of them when I got home, and I wanted to give this a few months to settle in. I wanted to make sure it was going to work, because I've been to some really awesome, like Tony Robbins conferences and motivational seminars, where I come out of there with like a notebook of notes and I'm on fire and I'm ready to go. And that usually fades away. You get some
Yeah.
good nuggets, but after about 3 months, I was like, you know what? This really did change my life. And so I reached out to Jerry. I just sent him an email and I said, hey man, I just want to thank you for starting this place. He obviously didn't invent or start ayahuasca, but he created this safe place to go to do it. And, we just kind of started talking a little bit, and the stars just kind of aligned to where Rhythmia wants to make our center more accessible for more people. We want to grow. We want to bring more people in. And as somebody who had, I felt like I'd escaped kind of the prison of my own mind. And I felt like ayahuasca and Rythmia gave me the keys to do that. You know how it is, Tim. Like once you feel that, you just want to help others feel that
Yeah.
same freedom. And that's really
Hence
all
the
it was.
podcast.
It's a podcast.
Yeah.
So that's all it was, man. That little shift, that conversation. And, up until now, like I I'm not a huge piece of Rhythmia, like their day-to-day operations, the teachings, everything they have is just so good. I'm just there to be a small part to help bring people there and then hopefully help us expand and like I said, make it more accessible for everybody.
And you guys are you're producing a docuseries, and that's coming up pretty soon. Can you kind of touch on that and what that's going to be about?
Yeah, so we're actually very excited about that. I feel like there haven't been enough documentaries or enough really good shows about ayahuasca and these journeys. And so what we wanted to do is we first of all partnered with a great production company and directors and editors and storytellers to come help this be put into motion. But what we did is we sent out a casting call to a lot of people who had applied to get scholarships to go to Rhythmia, who, maybe they couldn't afford it or maybe they've been wanting to go forever. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to find 6 or 7 people from around the world that could really use this kind of help and that they had exhausted their other options. So we interviewed, dozens of different people. We settled on 7 cast members who I think, probably most of them personally now.
Yeah.
And we basically brought them all down for a week back in July. And, we captured some footage of them before they got to Rhythmia, throughout their journey there, and then afterwards. And it's amazing because we wanted to get people, like I said, from different walks of life. So we have, a military vet who's been suffering with PTSD for 25 years, maybe 30 years. We have a good friend of mine who had made some poor decisions early in his life and actually was in prison for a long time and has since turned his life around. We have people who have been through different forms of abuse, people who haven't been accepted by their family. We brought them all together. They all went on their own journey. And you never really know how that week is going to go, but we captured all of that. And I think the magic there is just the vulnerability, the authenticity, and kudos to these cast members for letting us film that, because I don't know how you felt, but for me, going in and doing this and then exposing all of that to the world, I never would have done. So we're just very grateful that they were willing to share that. And we are wrapping it up. We have a trailer that we'll be releasing probably in the next several days. And then we hope to get the first episode of this docuseries out. We're hoping this month, January 2025 or February at the latest.
Awesome. I can't wait to watch it. I know it's going to be fantastic. And there's so many people out there who could use ayahuasca and they're scared to do it. So this is going to be a good little preview of what it's like. And nothing can really explain ayahuasca until you're in it, but it's gonna give them a little nugget. So I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on so you were raised, you live out in the Utah area, and you were raised in the Mormon church, and I know a lot of now there seems to be kind of a shift where a lot of Mormons are kind of going down this path. Not a lot, but some Mormons are kind of going down this path. And have you noticed any kind of like conflict or acceptance, or how people in the church are starting to perceive this medicine?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't, we can talk about like the LDS background, but
Mhm.
I think it's probably more similar to just people from various faiths and religions. A lot of us were born into a certain religion or faith. Um, and for the most part, they're all beautiful and they're all great. But some of us grew up and we realized, hey, just because, my mom or my dad or my grandparents were in this, at some point you really need to decide for yourself, does this feel like the right path for me? So I grew up in Texas, and my parents were kind of on 2 different ends of the spectrum. My mom was from a long line of very faithful, LDS church going family, just beautiful family. Like I have the most amazing cousins, aunts, uncles, my grandparents, everybody. And then my dad grew up in the South, with more of a traditional Christian upbringing, but he wasn't someone that was overly religious, but he was very supportive. And we went to church every Sunday. And, it was one of those things as kids, we hated going because we'd rather be home playing in the woods or playing on Nintendo like any kid. But man, it's just a huge blessing in my life. And I learned a lot of Christ-like teachings that still to this day, I feel like are just kind of like at my core. So I'm very grateful for that. But to get back to your question, I think what happens is people start to question their faith. They start to, as we get older, we really start to wonder, like, what is God? Is there a God? What do we feel about it? And when we start having kids, I think some of those questions really just start to magnify. So for me, I should say for my wife and I, we both kind of journeyed out of traditional religious backgrounds in different ways. To her credit, I think there were certain things that just didn't fit in her like faith box anymore, where she had just felt a little bit more of an expansion. It was just this full acceptance. For me, as I did, just more research and more feeling out, I started to just kind of detach from it a little bit because certain things just didn't feel good for me. So I think when you go into this type of medicine work, what it can do is it can really just help you rebuild or discover for the first time your relationship with God and the universe. And to me, the way that that's manifested in these ceremonies or after, it's really just getting in touch with yourself. It's getting in alignment with yourself. And sometimes when you're in these really deep processes, you are so challenged by the medicine that the only thing left is faith. And then you start to question, well, what do I even have faith in? But for me, I have found that, and it's something I'm still working on being consistent with every day. But I do think for a lot of people, it gets them to a place where they just have a lot more confidence and a lot more trust in the universe that things are going to work out okay. And probably the biggest thing I've learned from all of it that I didn't really grasp before is how much we all on this earth are one,
Mm-hmm.
one love, one people, one community. We really should be serving others. I mean, you see when there's natural disasters, we always see like people band together so good to help. And I think that's at our core, but our world is so sped up and we're always trying to fight to get on top of one another that's kind of lost. And so I think for me, that's the best way to sum it up is it's allowed me to take just a strict set of rules or teachings and kind of shake that up and find out what really works by making me feel at one with myself and what helps me to serve others. And just to kind of like expand that way.
Yeah, it's for me, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I have never actually felt closer to God, and some people say the universe or God or what. I think it's all the same,
It seems
same,
it seems the same
same
to me
thing.
too.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from the God, word because God is God, but I believe the universe is almost a conscious thing, and we are all connected, and it's incredible the insight you get while you're on some of these journeys, and I've literally never felt closer to God. So um,
And one other thing I'd like to add about that too, Tim, because I think a lot of people go that are, well, they go or maybe they don't go. Like, let's say someone is LDS or they're Catholic or they're Muslim, whatever it might be, and they may want to work on themselves, but they don't want their faith challenged. They don't want to leave their religion or their church. And I totally get that. And the beautiful thing about doing this kind of plant medicine work is that if you're in that, all it's going to do is it's probably going to strengthen your resolve and strengthen your faith in the church or the religion you're already in. So we've had a lot of really devout LDS members and members from other religions who have gone to Rythmia and participated, and they get home and they serve even better in their church. So it's not like it's going to take you out of that belief. It's just going to help you, again, connect more deeply with yourself so that you can then connect more deeply with your faith, your religion, your church. And so I do want to make sure people understand that it's not something that's going to lead you to be atheist or lead you to stop going to whatever church you might go to. If anything, hopefully it helps you dive more deeply into that.
yeah, absolutely. I've had a number of comments on some of my videos, and some people are saying, "Oh, you're dabbling in, you know, basically witchcraft or something like that." And I'm like, this is medicine that has been around for thousands of years, and basically, I come back to, if you're able to take, all these medications that the VA gives you, it's the same. I don't want to say it's the same thing because it's absolutely not. This actually works. Just about anything can be used for good or bad purposes. So um, just because it's not, prescribed over the counter doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a shot.
That's the thing. And also there are so many of us, especially, in the United States, that when we can't turn anywhere else, we go to a doctor, we get medication, right? And those those things are not necessarily always the best long-term options. I was on a couple of different antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications before Rythmia that I'm no longer on, and that's great. And so it's just one of those things. If it can bring a little bit of freedom, a little bit of relief, allows you to really just live more fully and more authentically, then you can go out and again, you can just maximize your value in your church and your community, wherever it is. So for anybody who's thinking about doing this, I would tell them it doesn't really matter what your faith, religion, upbringing is. There's room for you to love yourself more, love other people more, and that's just going to help.
Awesome. I also kind of wanted to touch a little bit. Well, you are very accomplished businessman, and you got your hands in all kinds of different stuff. Some of the, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're very successful. I did want to kind of pick your brain a little bit. People out there starting new businesses, or I don't know if you even want to go down this road. I can edit this part out, but uh,
Let's not.
let's not go down this road.
No, let's not edit it out. If we're doing
Oh,
it, let's do
okay. All right,
it.
let's do it. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you've started since I've known you 10, 12 years now. I mean, you've been started a bunch of businesses, and some have gone great, some haven't. That's just being an entrepreneur. Like it seems like you finally fucking made it. Like how the hell do you keep grinding when you're just starting out, you're starting a business? Maybe when I first met you, you're showing up in a minivan full of kids, and
Oh
now
yeah.
you're doing good and making shit happen. So how the hell do you have the persistence to keep going, and what finally clicked for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a couple of things. I would say, for people who are just wanting to start out or they're entrepreneurs, but things haven't worked yet, or they would like to break off from their business and start their own thing, anybody can do it. It's usually just a little bit of a fear-based mentality that keeps us stuck. So I think for me, and again, this is probably credit to my parents, I just always grew up feeling like I was special, believing in myself. I've always struggled, especially when I was younger. I didn't have a lot of self-esteem and I didn't really have a lot of self-confidence, but I did have a lot of confidence in my abilities. And I just had a lot of belief that, things would work out. And so the biggest thing is just taking that step and just going for it. Because if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? And there's nothing that's any more special about someone who is a billionaire compared to there's people that have the exact same skill set or even better than that billionaire that are working in much less fulfilling jobs just because they won't take that step. And so for me, I just never wanted to live a life where I would look back and regret not trying. That's the first thing. The second thing I would add to that is that, my mentality, along with, my best friend and my business partner, Mark Sullivan, I think what we've always had since we were in our early 20s is we always had the mentality of like, let's swing for the fences. And if we strike out and we fall on our face and we lose money and we fail miserably, cool. Let's get back up there and let's swing for the fences. And if we do that enough times, we're eventually going to hit a home run or a grand slam. And then that's really all it takes is one. And so that's really been something that's kept me through is when something has failed or we've lost money. And I've had times, as you probably know, like in our business career where I've been just so deep in debt with no options, nowhere to turn. I had to borrow money from family to prevent our house from being taken. I've been in those places 2 or 3 times. And it's the worst experience. It's the most stressful thing ever. But if you can just get through those, which we all can, life always gives you another chance. Eventually, you're gonna hit it, and then you just need a taste of that, and then it really just shifts the momentum. That's really all it is. It's just finding ways to be the most efficient, finding people who are already where you want to get to, being willing to learn, mentorship. And then, like I said, just really that mentality of like, I'm going to go for it. So I think for people starting out, those are really the key things. It's just being willing to do it because there really isn't a much difference from someone who we consider wildly financial successful compared to someone who isn't.
Mhm. Well, I gotta say, man, I'm absolutely so proud of you. Like, I talk about you, often. Like, man, my brother-in-law is crushing it. He's, you know, doing this and this and this and this. Like, I'm so blessed to be just around you because I like to be around people who grind and who are making shit happen. And that's definitely you and your cousin. And man, you guys are off the hook. I love it. So,
Well, thanks, man. I feel the same way, and honestly, what you just said reminds me of something that I heard when I was probably a teenager or my early 20s, and it just, you sometimes you hear those things and it just sticks with you. And most people have heard this, but they say that you're kind of the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And when I heard that, I just, again, I wanted to be successful. So I was like, okay, well, I really need to take this to heart. Who am I spending my time with? And I've just seen that statement is so true. I've seen it in evidence in all of my friends, my relationships, people I know, people who are struggling, people who are doing well. It really is about finding the right tribe, the right mentors, the right people. Because some of us are still in a place where we're stuck. And and this is almost kind of ties into like the plant medicine thing, but our nervous systems would rather keep us in a familiar hell than allow us to grow into an unfamiliar or uncomfortable heaven. And so that's what we tend to do is we tend to gravitate towards those that are on the same level or below us because it keeps us safe. Um, and so it's really just about taking a hard look at where do I want to get and who am I surrounding myself by? That's probably the biggest shift most people can make immediately is just upgrading their network of friends, not meaning they're leaving anyone behind, but who are you learning from? Because if you're not being challenged and being pushed out of your comfort zone, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about? I've had a handful of people on who are, thought leaders or motivational coaches. Have you experimented with any like business coaches and is it worth the money? Like, because I've looked into it a little bit and I'm like, I don't know. I think I could run Chat GBT and learn just as much as what these guys are telling me, but I don't know if I'm
That
off base.
that GPT is kind of changing the game.
Yeah.
I would say this. I would say I'm a huge believer in mentorship. I think for the most part, it makes sense to almost always have a coach. I've been through a lot of coaching programs. My wife and I are in a coaching program right now to like help our relationship. So I'm actually a big fan of those. The first thing I would look for though is this person that I'm going to invest in, do they have what I want?
Mhm.
Because I think the tough thing now, because things are so available on social media, there's so many courses and packages and mentoring and coaching that are charging, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000. The first thing you have to ask is, does this person actually walk the walk? Do they have what I want?
Mhm.
Or are they just making money selling this idea to other people?
Yeah.
And then it's usually pretty easy to kind of like cut the chafe a little bit and know, okay, this guy or this woman, they're legit, they've done it. So if you can find those people that are living it and doing it, I think typically those are great ways to go into. But again, the get rich quick things, the people who are 20 years old and say, for 5 grand, I can show you how to make 80 grand a month starting next
Yeah.
week. Like
Yeah.
it sounds so good. It looks so sexy on social media, but those are the ones you want to stay away from.
Yeah, absolutely. I interviewed a guy and he was like, "Man, you can make, X amount of dollars. I made this amount of dollars this year." And I was like, "Shit, dude." I mean, it's not impressive to me. Like, but you want to charge me $10,000 for your three month course, and I'm like, you're not giving me anything to
Yeah, it's
make
like
money
if
out
you're
of.
really doing it that good, wouldn't you be better off just spending more time growing your business and making your money instead of
Yeah,
like coaching? Because that takes a lot of time. But
yeah,
some people are called to be coaches and mentors. That's not something that like. I do enjoy mentoring, but that's not something I feel like I'm just a natural at necessarily. So it's not something I've ever really like wanted to offer. But I love helping people. I just never wanted to build a course around it. And there are so many amazing people out there that have really good courses, really good training. So there's no shortage of them. You just have to find the right people.
right on.
But so Tim, let me ask you this. So you've now
Yeah,
have been to Rhythmia, you've done this plant
yeah,
medicine a few times, you've started this podcast. And I've listened to them. I understand kind of where you're coming from, but I would love to hear from you, like your motivation and having all these different guests and talking to people. Aside from your own goals with the podcast, just for you personally,
yeah.
what is
Well,
the most rewarding thing about doing this and where do you want to take this to?
man, nobody's ever asked me any questions on my podcast, so thank you. Man, for me doing it, I have touched on a little bit about my background. As some people know, maybe not. This might be your first time listening to the podcast, but so I grew up pastor, son of a pastor, one of 5 kids. I was the middle kid. Kind of a rough childhood. Sorry, mom and dad. I know they listen, but it wasn't easy. I was homeschooled. And then joined the military at 17, did 13 years in the military, mostly National Guard. But, after 9/11, I served on the Golden Gate Bridge, watched many people jump off and kill themselves and talked to some of the families. Went to Iraq and experienced that whole thing, came back with severe PTSD, was in a, uh, very bad marriage from the time I was in a relationship for about 10 years. That was awful. But I didn't leave in time. Then my brother was killed in a car accident in 2007. Then I was in law enforcement and dealt with some really awful suicides, and a child died on me that was the same age as my son, and just exacerbated. It was just life compounding, like uh, horrible situations. I know everybody has a lot of bad situations in their life, and maybe mine seems like nothing, but to me, it was a lot. And went to the VA, was on SSRIs for 10, 15 years, you know, on and off, tried counseling, therapy, basically just used alcohol to help, you know, get through uh, social, you know, gatherings and stuff like that. But
Just to cope as best as you could.
yeah,
Sometimes that's all we
coping.
can do, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you out of the blue, I didn't know that you went to Rhythmia. I had no idea, and then I kind of learned about it, but I had noticed some changes in you, and it's like, man, Earl seems like he's doing really great and everything. And then you sent me the invite to try ayahuasca, and I had heard about it on Joe Rogan, and I was very interested in it. But it's nothing I would have ever done. I didn't know where to find it, you know, anything about it. And I'd heard about it. And so that opportunity came up, and I was like, shit, I'll try anything right now because I mean, I was, you know, on the outside, I look great, but on the inside, it's just havoc. You know, it's anxiety, it's depression, it's, you know, drinking too much, it's just all kinds of stuff, you know. And yeah, I can live my life and be a good dad and all this stuff, you know, and still function, but, you know, I'm broken on the inside. And so doing, you know, taking that leap of faith, I mean, it was terrifying for me to take that leap of faith, but I, you know, I was at my wit's end, and as soon as I said yes, yeah, I'll go down there, you know, when you invited me, it was things just started shifting, and they say, you know, Mother Ayahuasca knows you're coming, and things will start changing in your life, and they started changing. I'm starting to get chills just saying it. And it was the hardest journey I've ever experienced in my entire life. And it was also the best thing I've ever done in my entire life, all wrapped into the same experience. I mean, I literally was battling my own demons on, you know, one of the nights. And on the last night, I mean, you know, of my first time down there, literally, you know, they say you can die and be born again. And that literally happened to me. And I was shown in so much of the trauma in my life and why those things happened. It just was like answer after answer that I was given on why these things happened in my life. And this isn't who you are. These are just things that happened to you. And um, literally, I felt like I died and was born again, and had basically every answer I ever needed uh, given to me. And it was literally the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. I'm not on SSRIs. You know, my alcohol consumption is for fun now. It's not because I need it. Um,
Yeah.
and it just, man, I you changed my life, buddy. You really did. You saved my life. I probably would have wound up, you know, drinking myself to death in the next 20 years. I promise you. Not because that's what I want, but it was the way of coping for me. And so anybody out there who's thinking about doing this medicine, like if you are struggling, please, please, please give it a shot. I'm not saying you have to go to Rhythmia. I would highly recommend going to Rhythmia because it is licensed, it's safe, it's, you know, an incredible place. And I've been back
Yeah.
a couple
Dude,
times.
thanks for sharing that, man. It's, you know, it's so impactful to hear someone like you who has served our country, been in law enforcement, and to know that, like, you know, even those strong leadership, alpha male type guys, and we all get into these periods of chaos. That is just like you said, you can look strong on the outside, but on the inside, there's like so much turbulence. And when you don't know how to get out of that, it's just true suffering. I know that's how I
Right.
felt. It sounds like that's how you felt as well, and you just don't believe that that suffering can end. But you know, to kind of echo what you said, for anyone who feels that same way, Arrhythmia is a great option. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of beautiful places in Peru and Colombia, you know, all over the world where you can go and sit with the medicine and find really good trusted guides and shamans. I mean, it's a medicine and it's a path that I definitely hold very sacred and I revere it. I think one of the keys of what you just said, Tim, is it's like when you have a lot of that shame, a lot of that pain, a lot of that suffering, I think what these plant medicines can do is they can help you shift that suffering to more of a curiosity. And then when you're in these journeys, you start to become curious of why do I feel so much pain about this? Or how did this traumatic event make me feel? What does it mean about me? And so when you start to replace some of the judgment with curiosity, it really helps. And I think ultimately, and I've heard this before, but like ultimately the healing that you're looking for is not just becoming the best version of yourself. The key is learning to love the parts of yourself that you've always thought were unforgivable.
Hmm.
And once you forgive yourself, once you forgive others, once you forgive God, whatever you need to do, you realize that's how you become the best version of yourself. Is you realize we've all done the best job that we could at the time we did it with the information and the environment that we were in. And I think self-forgiveness, speaking for myself, was probably kind of the hardest pill to swallow because none of us deserve it, right, in our own minds. But I do think that's kind of the key that opens up a lot of this healing for people. And then from there, it's just about, like I said, being curious about what else you can learn. And then you start to shift from like the pain and the suffering to like, how can I help others? And it seems like you and I have been on similar paths with that, with you doing the podcast and with both of us, trying to just help enlighten people because we just want to help. So it's
Yeah.
a beautiful work.
It is beautiful, and that is my whole goal behind this podcast, is to help other people. And I know there are a couple people who are going down to Rythmia, and I'm so excited for them to they're going down in January. And one of the guys I interviewed, Lieutenant Colonel, he's slipping.
Yeah.
But
He's
yeah,
going down though.
yeah, he's going down. But and another thing, I have been a couple times down there since my first time in December. And some people are like, well, does it wear off? Why do you need to go back? And it's like, no, it didn't wear off. It's actually, I'm learning more and more about myself. And uh, I'm helping other people, just being there with them, sometimes on their first journey. And so it's not necessarily something you have to do over and over again, but you can definitely learn more about yourself and grow even farther. So I just want people to know that.
I would agree with that. The first few times you go down this kind of an intentional journey, a lot of times what we're doing is we're leaving behind the baggage, the judgments, the toxicity, some of that negative stuff. And one of the beautiful things about this medicine is it usually doesn't make you relive those same things more than once. So you kind of clean that stuff up. And then, I've been down a number of times too, but for me, the way I view it is each time I sit with it now, it's not because I need it or I'm struggling and like I have to get back into it. It just kind of broadens your perspective a little bit
Mhm.
each time. And so I think any of the really brilliant shamans and guides that I've learned from, they all kind of echo the same thing, which is that the medicine, the point of this is that you realize you are your own healer, your connection with yourself, with higher power, with God. That's the key. The medicine can help get you back there, but it's not like you need it every month or every 6 months or every year. It is a good idea for a lot of people to go back and experience it every, once a year, every few years, whenever they feel called to it. But the key is that the medicine is trying to help you to do this on your own because we are all capable of doing it. It's not something like once you see something, you can't ever unsee it. So it's not something that wears off, but it is easy. We get caught up in the chaos of life. We leave behind our daily practices. I mean, just a quick example for me. One thing I never did before I did this work, and one thing I try to do now is in the mornings, like when I wake up and I go in my closet, I'm just getting dressed. I try to take 10 or 15 seconds to just give thanks. And I never really used to pray on my own for a long time. But now it's just like, man, thank you for this day. Thank you for this miracle of another day to enjoy the sunshine, enjoy my family, to go make things happen, to face challenges and obstacles. But just getting into that little moment of like gratitude for me is just what sets my whole day off. And those little daily practices like that can kind of help things stay consistent to where you don't feel like you need to have this every so often.
Yeah, absolutely. Breath work and yoga and meditation, those are all
All those, yeah.
excellent things to help you. And yeah, life still happens and things pop up, and you're not going to be perfect, but you definitely learn a lot about yourself, and get more tools on how to uh, navigate life. So um
Amen.
all right. You got anything else for me you wanna promote?
I don't think so, man. Just I appreciate you putting all the time and effort into this. And I know, a few years ago, if I was trying to research where I could go get some help or how to go about doing it, having a show like this for me to be able to listen to would have been like super helpful. So I'm just really grateful that you're doing it. And I know you've already touched a lot of people. And yeah, I look forward to you continuing to share amazing stories and seeing you grow, Tim. And so just, yeah, grateful to be on, grateful to chat with you, and excited to see what comes next.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And we'll get up above 10,000 subscribers.
There we go. Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks, brother.